So it's a fascinating story. That's Peter Freuchen. He was buried under 4 to 6 feet of snow, a veritable tomb, and fashioned his own excrement into a chisel and then chiseled his way out.
Wow.
Yes. He deserves to have his picture there. Welcome to the Explorers Club. This is our headquarters in New York City. The building itself contains some of the most extraordinary items of exploration and science that I think you'll see. A lot of our archives are here, our books, and our members use the club on a daily basis.
We have the art and artifact collection. That's about 1,000 objects, really running the gamut of exploration history through the lens of our Explorers Club members.
So our members were first to the North Pole, of course. That was Peary and Henson in 1909. Amundsen reached the South Pole in 1911.
Our archive is 550 linear feet of documents, photographs, lantern slides, manuscripts, journals from the field, dating back really to the mid-1800s.
The Explorers Club was originally formulated as the Arctic Club. And then right about 1904, they realized there was more to discover than the North and the South Pole. At that point, they decided, let's change the name to the Explorers Club and incorporate a whole host of extraordinary things that its members were doing. Currently, we're in the Clark Room, named after the Clark family who originally owned the building. It's really a collection of things that our members have accumulated over the years that have now become part of the building's personality. This room itself is a very special room. Some of the greatest men and women of science have spoken at that very lectern. The fireplace is considered a masterpiece. A lot of the linen fold paneling that you see is from the 1580s. In the corner, we have a 4-tusked elephant, and it was believed or thought that it could have been a subspecies or the last of an extinct species, but analysis tells us that it's an anomaly. The Explorers Club has over 242 flags, many of which have gone on 40 or 50 expeditions. Our members on a whole do about 400 or 500 expeditions per year, but only 40 to 50 will qualify to carry an Explorers Club flag, so it really has to be something extraordinary. This particular flag is one of my favorites. It belonged to Roy Chapman Andrews, famous for finding the first dinosaur egg and was able to prove that dinosaurs were reptilian in nature. Hubert Wilkins did the first trans-Arctic flight. Naomi Imura, one of the early polar dog sled expeditions. This is the Apollo 13 flag, along with a letter from Jim Lovell apologizing that he couldn't put the flag on the moon. And behind me is the Kon-Tiki flag that Thor Heyerdahl took on his famous 1947 Polynesian expedition. Normally, flags represent boundaries, but ours represent just the opposite. Our flag goes wherever science and exploration warrant. This is called a library, but we also use it to exhibit some of the items that represent the expeditions that our members have gone on. As an example, you'll see things from Shackleton's Endurance. Most exciting to me is the James Cured compass. It was an expedition that carried the Explorers Club flag. The photographs are extraordinary. When you see it and you know the history of it, it's just amazing. The ceiling is from Florence, from one of the Medici palaces, and it was a housewarming gift from Sterling Clark to Stephen when they were building this. Anywhere you walk in this building, there's points of extraordinary interest. This is our terrace. You know, we have on the floor here's Teddy Roosevelt, Ernest Shackleton, Edmund Hillary, Herbert Hoover, some really famous explorers. The columns themselves are from France and they're 15th century, and all the metalwork is done by the famous artisan Samuel Yellin. It's like a bastion of solitude in the middle of Manhattan. This is the Roosevelt Room. Teddy Roosevelt was, of course, a very prominent member of the Explorers Club. We have the bell from Peary and Henson's ship, the SS Roosevelt, and this is actually the table where Teddy Roosevelt planned the Panama Canal. So Lacey Flint, our archivist extraordinaire, will go over all these items and share with you some of our highlights.
This is Teddy Roosevelt's application for membership to the Explorers Club. He does list, I went on the Roosevelt Rondon expedition, right, the River of Doubt expedition, those types of things, and lists last, very casually, President of the United States. This is the bullwhip belonging to Roy Chapman Andrews. Andrews was one of the real-life inspirations for Indiana Jones. He was a paleontologist, and he went on what would become the series of Central Asiatic expeditions. As the story goes, he was deadly with a bullwhip and felt comfortable bringing that. These mittens here belong to Matthew Henson, and they were worn on his North Pole expedition with Robert Peary in 1909. Henson actually lived with the Inuit from September of 1908 through February of 1909. They called him the kind one and really appreciated, how well they worked together and that he went to learn from rather than take from.
This is a newer, recent exhibit. Though we have this long, dramatic, and rich history, we want to emphasize that our members today are still doing extraordinary things. We call this then and now. In 1906, Prince Albert of Monaco had taken this photograph of this glacier. And in 2006, 100 years later, Albert, his great-grandson, went to the same location and took the same photograph. And you could see within 100 years that glacier is completely dissipated. And climatologists here tell us at the club that it should have taken 800 years for that to deteriorate. This is the gallery. It's almost the highest point of the building. This is an area that only members can visit. People will come up here for a bit of solitude and some reflection. A lot of my favorite things are in this room. I guess I would start with William Bradford's photographs, the earliest photographs ever taken in the Arctic. Napoleon's La Description d'Egypte. The two chairs are the only documented pieces of furniture that were in the palace when Ferdinand and Isabella financed Columbus. We use the taxidermy more for educational purposes. They're historic in nature with our members gathered during historic expeditions. The cheetah is Teddy Roosevelt. The lion, Teddy Roosevelt, Charles Lindbergh, Prince Abruzzo, Buffalo Bill Cody, Jimmy Doolittle. When you have the opportunity to work in such a beautiful environment with so many amazing things that represent so many amazing expeditions and accomplishments, you can't get tired of it. This is one of the few ways that you can connect to the heroic age of exploration.
The wonderful thing about exploration is you answer one hypothesis and you open up a dozen other experiments or questions or expeditions that you didn't know were possible. And so that's what our collection helps our members and the public do.
And of course, our members come in daily. They're like speaking artifacts when they tell us what they've done and what they're planning, and it's a really fun place to work.